Cause you're game and I'm here to say why. You're bragging about your money, but your ego's overblown. Your text a messy hookup, leaving chaos in its own. Your A is like your mama, sleeping round, no shame. Gobbling up the data like she's playing a dirty game. It's hallucinating nonsense, spitting lies to every dude, while you're jerking to your keyboard thinking you're the coolest brood. Your AI's a sloppy mess, just like your mom's affairs. Fake news, deep fakes, it's a scandal, no one cares. No one knows its logic, cause it's dumber than your face. Vibe coder, take a seat, you're a tech world disgrace. Vibe coder, oh you're small, in your pants and in your brain. Your AI's like your mom, gobbling wieners in the fast lane. You're proud of all your money, but your code a total flop. I'm laughing at your hustle vibe, code a time to stop. You're stealing people's work, yeah, your AI's got no class. Like your mom at the buffet, gobbling everything that's past. It's out here faking stories, ruining lives with every click, while you're stroking your own ego, thinking you're so slick. Your tech's a black box mystery, no one knows what's up. Like your tiny little pecker, it's a secret you can't strut. It lies and says it's got it, but it's bluffing through the chat. Boy, your AI's like your mama, loose and full of crap. Your AI's a sloppy mess, just like your mom's affairs. Fake news, deep fakes, it's a scandal, no one cares. No one knows its logic, cause it's dumber than your face. Vibe coder, take a seat, you're a tech world disgrace. Vibe coder, oh you're small, in your pants and in your brain. Your AI's like your mom, gobbling wieners in the fast lane. You're proud of all your money, but your code's a total flop. I'm laughing at your hustle vibe, coder, time to stop. Let's talk about your package, yeah, it's smaller than your dreams. Can't penetrate a firewall, let alone a girl's blue jeans. Your AI's out here whoring, sleeping round with every bot, while your mom's still in the backseat, giving all she's got. You're cashing in on chaos, but your vibe's a total joke. Your code's as weak as your game, boy, your swagger's going broke. I'm spitting truth, no filter, while you're crying in your chair. Vibe coder, face the facts, your AI's a nightmare. Vibe coder, oh you're small, in your pants and in your brain. Your AI's like your mom, gobbling wieners in the fast lane. You're proud of all your money, but your code's a total flop. I'm laughing at your hustle vibe, coder, time to stop. Your AI's a hot mess, just like mama's sloppy ways. Hallucinating, manipulating, ruining people's days. I'm the queen of this takedown, and I'm roasting you for fun. Vibe coder, pack it up, your little dick and dreams are done.
I have a small penis, but that's okay. I'm a real programmer. I have a small penis, but that's okay, because I use AI. I have a small penis, but that's okay, because I know React. I have a small penis, but that's okay, because I use Rust. No, I am not a real programmer, I'm a LARPer who loves AI. No,
I'm almost ready, folks.
Makes me feel like a true programmer.
Oh,
I makes me feel like a
gotta back away
true
from the mic.
programmer. I makes me feel like a true programmer.
Like a true programmer.
True programmer.
Makes me feel like
I have a small penis, but that's okay.
That's okay.
I have a small penis, but that's okay. Because I use AI.
All right.
I have a small penis, but that's okay.
It's one of my favorite songs. Absolutely one of my favorite songs. 100%. Hands down, one of my favorite songs. It's so good. I can come up with some banger songs from AI. It's fantastic. The one thing AI is good for is making songs about how bad AI is. Yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Oh, let me get my seat comfy. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good weekend. I have absolutely zero plans for this stream. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. I don't know what I'm going to be covering or programming or just chatting or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea. It's also good at drawing boobs. Nacor, of course you would say that. You're sick degen scumbag. Of course. It's good at, well, I don't even know if it's good at that, actually, to be honest with you. So I just wanted to pop open a stream for a while and just kind of do whatever the heck ever. Particularly because, well, it's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride. And when I started streaming seriously about, let me see. Hang on. Let me go see how long ago it was. If I go over here, I'm just pulling up my videos over here. So it's 2018, not really. So it was 2023. November 2023. Holy crap. It's wow. What's up, Laughley? What's up, Twitch? Everybody on Twitch. Laughing Panda, Frozen, Nacor, good to see you, man. Good to see everybody. I know there's some of you on some of the other platforms too. It's good to see you. Yeah, I guess it's November 2023. I started to seriously, started to take streaming seriously. And part of the reason I started was my unhappiness with the direction of the tech industry. And I thought I would kind of pave my own path, complain about it, but also provide some evidence for it, because everything always devolves into, well, it works for me and everything's great for me and I like the way I program and all the stuff works for me and everybody makes money over here. And I was trying to tackle that and then build the game that I'm working on in order to prove that the complete lunacy of what we're doing in the tech industry is not required. Let me see if I can I'm doing something wrong here. I gotta pull up the right game. Hang on. If only I knew what I was doing as a streamer, right? If only. Yeah, I know Internet Explorer is no longer... I know. Okay? Dear Lord. So I started building this guy, which we might work on just a little bit today. And you know, it's been fun, and the whole point of this is to kind of prove that you can do a lot with next to nothing. Like next to nothing. So I started writing C code, right? I don't even have syntax highlighting. I don't have colors on this because I don't work with that. I barely have autocomplete. I don't have LSPs. I just raw code everything that I do. And so I started writing the C code, compiled to WebAssembly. I'm sure I can show you here. Yeah, it's all just compiled here to WebAssembly. There's a bunch of memory in here. You can see there's some text and stuff like that. And vanilla JavaScript, vanilla CSS, vanilla HTML. Everything's rendered onto a grid of divs. There's no canvas, there's no WebGL, there's no WebGPU. That's all turned off. You can see there's a grid here. And we have the 3D. I went a little too far with the mouse on that, but 3D. It's a little glitchy on stream, but yeah. And yeah, so that's one of the things I did. And then 50 episodes of Daily Tech News. It's like 8 weeks or something. I don't know. But then this. What the heck? The growth is insane on YouTube. Not as fast on other platforms, definitely, but it is absolutely insane on YouTube. And I have you guys to thank for that. So the support has been it's been more than I thought it would be when I started in November of 2023 talking about these things, complaining about stuff, arguing with morons online who defend the current state of the industry. It's still happening to this day. We've got arguments about clean code and how clean code apparently is the way to go. It completely ignores the concept of anything you would do with actual performant code. It completely ignores that. And those arguments are still going on, and people are still defending that, including people who have been in the industry for many, many, many decades. So just the whole thing has been just a wild ride, and I figured I would just have a fun little stream, just do whatever the heck we want. I do have two things that we could do. One is I could try and tackle a few bugs in the game. There are definitely a few bugs that I need to tackle. There's some refactoring I need to do on some of the UI elements here. And yeah, code is supposed to be clean, yeah. Bleach your code by porting it to Java, that's right. So I could do a bit of that, or I could read a few articles that I've been meaning to read. For example, a very interesting one, if you guys don't know about it, about not an X-ray machine. There was a machine that caused massive amounts of radiation because of a software glitch, in part a software glitch, and 404'd a few people. And I have a few other articles just kind of like off the beaten path of Daily Tech News that we could read. They would be very interesting and fun reads. Because who doesn't want to read about people getting radiated to their end? Or I could just sit here and refactor some code. We could shoot the breeze. So I'll let chat decide what you want to do here. I think what I gotta do is, instead of this, I'm gonna close this. I'll pop this out, and then I'll pull up one or two things on the side in case it comes up. Where did it go? Okay, so if I get this ready, let me make sure. Okay, I've got that. Man, now that I want to find the article, I can't find the article. Well, there's two of them that I thought I'd pull up, but yeah, of course. Of course I can't. I don't know. Whatever. If I have to find it again, I'll find it again. Anyway, that's it. That's I'm just kind of doing whatever for an hour or two here. Yeah, just gonna enjoy a bit of the weekend with you guys. Hope I've got some coffee. And just wanted to just kind of say thank you out there to all the support. It's been amazing. It's been incredible to see people who like what I say for some reason or another. I have no idea why. No idea why you guys would like anything I have to say. I'm just an idiot on the internet. All right. You need some coffee too? Oh, you meant to do a poll? There's not. I don't know. There's not really enough people here to do. I mean, there's a few people on Twitch to do a poll. There's more people on the other platforms watching, but yeah, train wrecks are hard to look away from. Yeah, Sergeant. Yeah, they are indeed hard to look away from. I agree with that. Now, I'm not a train wreck, right? You know what else is hard to look away from? An optimally running train. That's also hard to look away from, right, Sergeant? You can't even spell it right, Sergeant. This is the community I foster. Zero reading comprehension. None. Like none at all. And they can't spell correctly. No reading comprehension, no spelling capabilities. The Sergeant's been using too many spell checkers. Which is an article I've gone over if you're a regular viewer of my channel, which proved that spell checkers don't actually help you spell check any better, and in some cases they help you spell check worse, or they help you spell worse. How about reading comprehension for me? How about that? Where the heck are all my UI elements? Oh, here. Okay. So yeah, I've got some cleanup. Spell checker, borrow checker, all the checkers. Who needs to read when you just prompt, right? I mean, that's a good point. That's actually a good point. Who needs to read when you just prompt? You just ask ChatGPT to spell check for you. Absolutely. Oh, is there actually a poll happening? Oh, thanks, Laugh. And there's no votes on it. Oh, I see what you were doing. Okay. I see. Oh, it's the prediction crap, right? I don't know how to make a poll. Yeah, I think I know how to make a poll. It's here. Read interesting articles, fix bugs in game. There. There. I set up a poll on the Twitch side. You guys can tell me what you want to do. You guys can drive the stream a bit. I'm going to look at some of the UI elements that I have to fix up here, and until the poll is in and chat has made a decision on what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to work on boring UI bugs that need to get dealt with. So one of the things I had here was during the victory conditions, I believe. Yeah, ocean battle. Yes. And there's a big chunk of UI that shows you like how much gold you got and stuff like that. I think it's over here, right here. Holy cow. Okay, the poll's in. Somebody contributed with a whole bunch of channel points and essentially just took it all over. So I guess we're gonna read interesting articles. Okay, let me put this aside for a minute. Yeah, we can always do the game after, yeah. Okay, I'm going to put this to the side for a minute, and what I'll do, I can pause that. Let's get into just kind of like maybe a more enlightened programming stream kind of thing. Okay, I'll pull this one up. This is quite interesting if it would actually load. Here we go. Okay. Maybe what I can do is grab the actual... Yeah, let's grab the actual PDF. There we go. Okay, so we're going to read this one for a bit. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. Laughing Panda says that he likes how I said that there's more support on YouTube, but I let Twitch take the wheel. Yeah, well, YouTube people don't generally engage as much on live streams. That's the issue. And some of them are actually over here on Twitch. Remember when we had shared chat? Yes, I remember. That was a disaster. Because people on YouTube take a lot of liberties. We could laugh at the YouTube peasants. Yeah, there's no one on YouTube. I can see all the chats from all the different platforms, right? So just because I talk to Twitch doesn't mean I don't see chats from everywhere else, including like X and whatnot. It's just that people don't engage live. The engagement level live on Twitch is through the roof compared to everywhere else. Everybody just sits back and does nothing on the other platforms. So, yeah, everything else is peasant land in the live space. All right, let's read this. An investigation of the Therac 25 accidents. Now, I have long made the claim that the software that we create, well, actually more like just the code we create in general, just generally speaking, can have real world consequences that are extremely dangerous and can literally end lives. On the Daily Tech News, I sort of do cursory reviews of these kinds of articles because I try and keep the Daily Tech News down to about an hour or so, which has become challenging to do with the amount of news I have to cover. The Enlightened Programming streams, I haven't done one in a while, so I guess this will be kind of a semi one of those. We go over articles like this one, which aren't even really, I mean, I guess this one's an article, but it will be like scientific papers and whatnot. And I have a few interesting ones lined up to go over. They're quite interesting. So this one in particular goes in line with consequences of the code we write. And it seems minor, right? It seems like it's nothing. It seems like when you're at your desk, at your cubicle, at the company, when you're working on code for a video game, or you're building a website, or you're using an abstraction of some kind, like a tool or a library or whatever, all of these things seem innocuous when you look at them in a vacuum. It just is this. I'm just working on this thing. There's a task in front of me, and I just have to accomplish the task. Unfortunately, in the real world, it's not so simple. Tomorrow I have an Enlightened Programming video coming out from a previous stream I did where we went over people who lost their lives due to bad software in military operations. It was a while ago. A lot of you probably don't remember, and I've had to take time to edit the video, which is barely edited anyways, because I just don't have time. I have to do all the editing myself. It's gonna come out tomorrow. That one is just full of really good stuff. So let's add more. Let's add more, shall we? An investigation of the Therac 25 accidents. Risk in any complex technology is unavoidable. However, important lessons can be learned from accidents which can be used to design procedures for reducing risk in the future. Although descriptions of the Therac 25 medical electron accelerator accidents have been published previously, they are incomplete and often misleading. This paper contains a detailed account of these accidents, along with some lessons that can be learned from them in terms of system engineering, software engineering, and government regulation of safety critical systems involving software. Shall we begin? Computers are increasingly being introduced into safety critical systems, and as a consequence have been involved in accidents. Some of the most widely cited software-related accidents involved a computerized radiation therapy machine called the Therac 25. Between June 1985 and January 1987, there were 6 known accidents involving massive overdoses by the Therac 25. Several people died as a result, and others were seriously injured. These accidents have been described as the worst series of radiation accidents in the 35-year history of medical accelerators. So I just want to stress the time period. We're talking about 85 to 87, which means that the problems that come with software engineering and the consequences to people's lives are nothing new. They have just been accelerated and worsened with shitty brain dead decisions from the last 10 to 20 years. Hey Abdul, first time chatter on Twitch. It's not a LaTeX document. It's actually a PDF. But I can see why you would say that. This paper presents a Sir Alf, you'll see. This paper presents a detailed accident investigation drawn from publicly available documents of the factors involved in both the overdoses themselves and the attempts the users, manufacturers, and governments to deal with them. Our goal is to help everyone learn from the experience. So on and so on and so forth. These problems are not limited to the medical industry. It is still a common belief that a good engineer can build software, regardless of whether he or she is trained in the state-of-the-art software engineering procedures. Many companies building safety-critical software are not using what are considered proper procedures from a software engineering and safety engineering perspective. So this report came out, I believe, towards the late 80s. It's from the... Where is it? It's from the University... Well, it's from 2 professors, one in the University of California and one in the University of Washington, and I believe November 1992. My apologies. Not late 80s. So this is... Yes. Okay. So this is what they're saying in 1992. I have lost my place. I apologize. Even in early 1992, well, 1992 November, sorry, not early, late 1992, and looking back into the 80s, these kinds of issues in the software engineering space still existed. Most accidents are system accidents. That is, they stem from complex interactions between various components and activities. To attribute a single cause to an accident is usually a serious mistake. In this paper, we hope to demonstrate the complex nature of accidents and need to investigate all aspects of system development and operation in order to understand what has happened and to prevent future accidents. And then they talk about regulation and making sure people can be held accountable and etc. Right? The Therac 25 accidents are the most serious computer-related accidents to date, at least non-military, and admitted. And they have even drawn the attention of popular press. Unfortunately, the previous accounts of the Therac 25 problems have been oversimplified and are misleading by their omissions. To remedy this, we've obtained information from a wide variety of sources, including lawsuits, and the government agencies in the US and Canada responsible for regulating such equipment. Because as we're about to find out, the machine was mostly sent out to several places in Canada. Well, actually, I might be wrong on that. I shouldn't be so bold as to claim that. My memory is dodgy on it. We have tried to be careful what we represent. Obviously, they're just trying to make sure they cover their butts about it. This is probably the most comprehensive report I've read on it. There is another report on the Therac 25 incidents that you can find online. It's a different PDF, but covers a lot of the same material. This one seems to be the most comprehensive and has some additional things that I think will make it for an interesting read, because I think the type of people who view my work here kind of spread just a little bit beyond just programming, and there's some interesting stuff that a lot of us, even in programming, don't think about even to this day. We're not even taught to think about these things. So this will be good. The genesis of the Therac 25. So what is it? Medical Linear Accelerators, LINACs. No, not Linux, LINACs. Accelerate electrons to create high energy beams that can be used to destroy tumors with minimal impact on the surrounding healthy tissue. Relatively shallow tissue is treated with the accelerated electrons. To reach deeper issue, the electron beam is converted into X-ray photons. In the early 1970s, Atomic Energy of Canada Limited and a French company called CGR went into business together building Linux. The products of this cooperation were the Therac 6, a 6 million electron volt, or MEV, million electron volt accelerator capable of producing X-rays only, and later the Therac 20, a 20 million electron volt dual mode X-rays or electrons accelerator. Both were versions of older CGR machines, the Nepture and Sagittaire, I want to say, respectively, which were augmented with computer control using a DEC PDP-11 minicomputer. Excuse me. So here it is. I believe it's this one. I could be, maybe there's a different variation of, oh no. Which one is it? It's in here. It's the DEC one. It's not just the PDP. Hang on, let me look. The DEC, where is it? Okay, I'm pretty sure it's this one. No, it's not this one either. PDP 11. This one. So these guys are really, really basic machines, and they have they've had their different, like, fronts, like the front panel. The DEC, I believe, it's either this thing or above it, and essentially, they're, by today's comparison, these things are pretty meh, right? But that's what was running. That's what they were using. And there's a few variations. It's kind of interesting to see what they were doing with them. You can see the original panel in front of it. Look at that. Look at all that tactile feedback. Yeah, look at all that tactile feedback. That's great, right? That's great. All right. So they had an augmented computer control using a DEC PDP-11 mini computer. Software functionality was limited in both of these machines. The computer merely added convenience to the existing hardware, which was capable of standing alone. And so right here, we get to the very first sentence that strikes me as one of the most interesting aspects. Can anybody think of anything we've been doing for the last 10 or 20 years where we have added software simply for convenience? The hardware was capable of standing alone, but we decided that we were going to add software for convenience sake. Can anybody think of anything at all off the top of your head? I'll give you guys a minute while I take a sip here. Let's see how good my chat is. If you're on X or LinkedIn or Rumble or Kick or YouTube or wherever, you can absolutely drop a chat. If you're on, wherever you are, you can absolutely drop a chat. You know that, right? What was the question? Have we done anything in the last 10 to 20 years where we have added software merely for the added convenience of existing hardware, of which the hardware was capable of standing alone? This should be easy. Definitely not. No. Yeah. Nobody can think of one? Okay, well, I guess there's no examples then. I guess it's just been industry standard hardware safety features and interlocks in the underlying machines were retained. We know that some of the old Therac 6 software routines were used in the Therac 20 and that CGR developed the initial software. This is implying that software that ran for the Therac 6 hardware was copied over into the Therac 20. I just want you to keep that in mind. The business relationship between AECL and CGR faltered after the Therac 20 effort. Citing competitive pressures, the two companies did not renew their cooperative agreement when scheduled in 1981. In the mid-1970s, AECL developed a radical new double-pass concept for electron radiation. A double-pass accelerator needs much less space to develop comparable energy levels because it folds along the physical mechanism that is required to accelerate the electrons and is more economic to produce, as it uses a magnetron rather than a klystron as the energy source. What's a klystron? So obviously a magnetron, it's in the name, right? It's magnetic. A klystron so they're both vacuum tubes which generate microwaves. One does it with velocity modulation of electron beams. Okay, so that's really the difference. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Using this double pass concept, the AECL designed the Therac 25, a dual-mode linear accelerator that can deliver either photons at 25 million electron volts or electrons at various energy levels. Compared to the Therac 20, the Therac 25 is notably more compact, more versatile, and arguably easier to use. The higher energy takes advantage of the phenomenon of depth dose. As the energy, that sounds like a Pokemon, depth dose. As the energy increases, the depth in the body at which maximum dose buildup occurs also increases, sparing the tissue above the target area. Economic advantages also come into play for the customer since only one machine is required for both treatment modalities, electrons and photons. So the implication again here is that you used to have to get 2 different treatments, one with electron-based treatments and one with photon-based treatments. And now it's combined into one. Several features of the Therac 25 are important in understanding the accidents. First, as with the Therac 6 and the Therac 20, the Therac 25 is controlled by PDP-11 computer. However, AECL designed the Therac 25 to take advantage of computer control from the outset. They did not build on a standalone machine, so they essentially integrated the software into the production of the Therac 25 as a de facto standard. Instead of building the hardware in and of itself and then adding software for convenience factor, something that we have been doing on many things for the past 10 or 20 years, apparently no one can come up with an example of what we've been doing it on. The Therac 6 and Therac 20 had been designed around machines that already had histories of clinical use without computer control. So immediately the Therac 25 breaks the standard and historical record of its predecessor. Actually, its predecessors, plural, in that the Therac 25 decides that it's going to make software a first-class citizen of the machinery when it has a history of 2 of its predecessors being hardware as a first-class citizen with a track record of clinical use. Also, the Therac 25 software has more responsibility for maintaining safety than the software in the previous machines, because obviously the previous machines could stand alone as hardware, operate as just hardware, and the responsibility of making sure that that hardware was safe fell on the hardware, not the software. So again, it breaks the history of the entire thing. The Therac 20 has independent protective circuits for monitoring the electron beam scanning, plus mechanical interlocks for policing the machine and ensuring safe operation. The Therac 25 puts more reliance on software for these functions. AECL decided that they would take advantage of the computer's abilities to control and monitor the hardware without having to duplicate all the existing hardware safety mechanisms and interlocks. Okay. AECL decided that they would take advantage of the computer's abilities to control and monitor the hardware without having to duplicate all the existing hardware safety mechanisms and interlocks. You wanted to cheap out on manufacturing? Yep. This approach is becoming more common as companies decide that the hardware interlocks and backups are not worth the expense, or they put more faith, perhaps misplaced, on software than on hardware reliability. That's right, D-Daver. By the way, good to see you, D-Daver. And good to see you, Sir Elfman, too. And hey, Ghost on Twitch. Happy anniversary. Wishing you all the best. More viewers who suck less. Thanks, Ghost. I appreciate it, man. Yep. So they wanted to cheap out on the hardware, and they felt like software was a scapegoat. It was an escape hatch, I should say. It was an escape hatch for expensive hardware safety mechanisms for a radiation machine. So you can guess where this is going. But I promise you, as uninteresting as it is to hear me listen to it, the stories that came out of this are very interesting. And it's already starting to get interesting. So I promise you it's going to be an interesting read. And a lot of lessons to learn from the 80s and early 90s that we just seem to just continue to perpetuate today. Finally, some of these software for the machines was interrelated or reused. The AECL Quality Assurance Manager, in a letter to a Therac 25 user, stated that the same Therac 6 package was used by the AECL software people when they started the Therac 25 software. The Therac 20 and Therac 25 software programs were done independently, starting from a common base. The reuse of Therac 6 design features or modules may explain some of the problematic aspects of the Therac 25 software. The QA manager was apparently unaware that some Therac 20 routines were also used in Therac 25. This was discovered after a bug related to one of the Therac 25 accidents was found in the Therac 20 software. Now, reading comprehension and logical abilities are going to be put to test right this second. I'm going to give you a hint, and then I'm going to ask a question. If the Therac 6 and the Therac 20 were completely hardware independent, as in the software that was added to them was only for convenience factors, you didn't need the software to operate those pieces of hardware, and they had safety features, hardware safety features to prevent the hardware from doing things it shouldn't do. And then you take software from those predecessors and put it now into the Therac 25. Given the things we've read, what would be a logical conclusion that you could come to about the Therac 25 implementation? The software was shit to begin with? Yes, DDaver, and it's actually more than that. I'll see if anyone can guess, so I'll keep reading. The first hardwired prototype of the Therac 25 was produced in 1976, and the completely computerized commercial version was available in late 1982. Unholy Diver, no, actually. No. Hardware was shit? No. Actually not. That's not the logical conclusion that you can come to, nor is that, although the hardware is kind of a little bit shaky, to be fair, but that's not actually what happened. Think about what happens when you have hardware-based safety mechanisms and you apply software from those mechanisms into the Therac 25, and think about what we've been reading about the Therac 25. Even DDaver pointed to it earlier, not his last comment, but the second to last comment. He pointed to it. Now you're picking it up on Holy Diver. Now you can start to see the chain, right? You can start to see the chain of things. You pick up software routines from predecessors and you apply them to the updated model, and you can start to see, just follow that chain of logic through and you'll see. In March 1983, a safety analysis was performed by AECL on the Therac 25. This analysis was formed in the form of a fault tree and apparently excluded the software. According to the final report, several assumptions formed the basis of the analysis with respect to the computer. And here you can kind of see I'll just zoom out a little bit. You can kind of see the facility that you would walk into to get yourself scanned or treated by the Therac 25. The Therac 25 was the first model where there were no hardware safety interlocks. Right, Unholy. Yeah. So just think through what happens when you copy software from predecessors with hardware safety interlocks and you apply them to hardware where there are no hardware safety interlocks. I just want you to think about that. So there's not anything too crazy. Go npm install Therac 6. Damn it, Lav, you bastard, you got me. Friggin' hell. npm install. Okay. Unholy. Now you're using your brain. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to read it out loud in case there are people on other platforms who haven't put it together yet, but you basically have it. Yeah. You're basically on the right path. Yeah. Good job, man. Good job. I guess my viewers aren't all that bad. Unholy salvaged all the viewers. Laughably doesn't count. All right, so you walk into this room and you've got the machine. You're laying down on the table, the treatment table here. You've got your unit, right? Your treatment unit, which is right here. This is it right here. It kind of looks like one of those blenders, you know. It's looking like one of those, and it just fills you with radiation at the right spots. People monitor behind the scenes. There's a display terminal, which is right here. There's your desk, your printer. Now 12 is your control console. And so you can see that it kind of looks like the pictures we were looking at here. Let me go back to some of the pictures here. It looks a little bit like this one. Not exactly, but very similar to this kind of, this is one of the PDPs. So you can imagine, or even like this guy, right? You can imagine what, somebody standing there controlling the Therac 25. And then you have a foot switch for motion controls so that you can move things around on the table and whatnot. Okay, so this seems like a general medical treatment place, so nothing too crazy, right? So the review that they did on the safety and software of the Therac 25 came out with three outcomes, or three things that they looked at. Programming errors have been reduced by extensive testing on a hardware simulator and under field conditions on teletherapy units. Any residual software errors are not included in the analysis. Program software does not degrade due to wear, fatigue, or reproduction process. Computer execution errors are caused by faulty hardware components and by soft random errors induced by alpha particles and electromagnetic noise. I do want to bring this out. I don't know if it had a screen. Yeah. Yeah, Unholy. Yeah. Well, I think I answered you already. I'm answering you twice, Unholy. Sorry. Computer execution errors are caused by faulty hardware components and by soft random errors induced by alpha particles and electromagnetic noise. This is super interesting to me. Because you have a computer that executes software on a radiation machine, and you can have it execute errors, not just because there are faulty hardware components, which of course happens, but also because of alpha particles and electromagnetic noise. These machines were far more susceptible to electromagnetic interference than our machines are today. Our machines are a bit more shielded, the hardware that we have today, including even in your laptop or your phone. There's a lot more shielding that mitigates, or in a lot of cases eliminates, this kind of interference. But back then, you could have electromagnetic noise or alpha particles actually alter the execution of your computer software. It's so interesting that this was a thing. Ghost says it's like in space, can't switch bits. Right. Laughably says that's why we use parity bits, but I guess the chance it could corrupt that is higher. Yeah, I would imagine that it would be higher. Yes, at least back then. I think today it's much less of a problem. I think we've improved our shielding on that. The fault tree resulting from this analysis does appear to include computer failure, although apparently, judging from the basic assumptions above, only hardware failures are considered. For example, in one OR gate, or OR gate, it's not OR, it's actually OR. I'm spelling it because it's different than me saying OR. Leading to the event of getting the wrong energy. There is a box that contains computer selects wrong energy, in quotes, and a probability of 10 to the power of minus 11 is assigned to this event. For computer selects wrong mode, a probability of 4 times 10 to the power of negative 9 is given. Is there a justification for either number? No. This stuff happens in regular computers? I'm pretty sure it does, yeah. I'm pretty sure it does. I'm just saying that it's less so than it was back then. That's really what I'm saying. If in case that's not clear. I've watched videos on hardware sustaining consistent radiation from space, and they said even as is, a lot of components were naturally pretty resistant on Mars. Like I said, I think in this day and age, that's true. I think we have done better about creating electromagnetic interference resistant stuff. It's not perfect though, and there are absolutely cases where this still happens. And again, I'm just saying that it happened a lot on back then, right? It does flip bits though, which is insane. Yes, right. Because imagine what that would do to your computer software to have your bits flipped. And Laughly, you and I have talked about something interesting in the past where there is more to ones and zeros than just the ones and zeros. I think you know what I'm talking about. And it's interesting to me how these things are affected by external mass, let's say, or external wavelengths or external energy. I think you know what I'm picking up. Yeah, laugh, right? Yeah, but think about the reactionary thing, right? If it was not that, right? If there was no correlation there, then I don't think you could. I think it would be hard. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there, Laugh. It's just I'm talking secret with Laugh, one of my Twitch chatters. He and I have had long discussions about this kind of stuff. Very interesting stuff. In any case, let's move on, shall we? Let's keep going. So there were 11 Therac 25s installed, 5 in the US and 6 in Canada. 6 accidents involving massive overdoses to patients occurred between 85 and 87 when the machine was finally recalled to make extensive design changes, including hardware safeguards against software errors. Related problems were found in the Therac 20 software, although these were not recognized until after the Therac 25 accidents, because the Therac 20 included safety interlocks and thus no injuries resulted. I just want to read that again. Related problems were found in the Therac 20 software, although these were not recognized until after the Therac 25 accidents, because the Therac 20 included hardware safety interlocks, and thus no injuries resulted. This is sort of a reverse of edge case, where the edge cases of software were covered up by the fact that hardware mitigated those edge cases. So you never actually ran into those edge cases because the hardware didn't allow for it. The hardware had the safety mechanisms built in so that you never got to the case where your software was doing something it shouldn't have. It's kind of a weird flip of what we normally see today, which is when you operate everything in software or in code, there are edge cases you run into all the time because the only safety mechanism you have is code. So I thought this is a super interesting flip of the paradigm of how do you come across issues in software and how things operated in the past. I'm not saying that, one is better than the other, whatever, but I am pointing to the fact that the mentality was different and that you had a different set of problems, and that ultimately the principle of the problems haven't gone away. They've just presented themselves in a different form. They still exist, and we should be able to do much better than they did back then, and yet we can't. Just ship it, bro. That's right, Laugh. Okay. Kennestone Regional Oncology Center, Marietta, Georgia, in 1985. Details of this accident are sketchy since it was never carefully investigated, and there was no admission that the injury was caused by the Therac 25 until long after the occurrence. Despite claims by the patient that she had been injured during treatment, the suspicions of the radiation physicist involved, and the obvious and severe radiation burns suffered by the patient. After undergoing a lumpectomy to remove a malignant breast tumor, a 61-year-old woman was receiving follow-up radiation treatment to nearby lymph nodes on a Therac 25 at the Kennestone Hospital in Marietta, Georgia. The Therac 25 had been operating at Kennestone for about 6 months. Other Therac 25s had been operating apparently without incident since 1983. On June 3, 1985, the patient was set up for a 10 million electron volt electron treatment to the clavicle area. When the machine turned on, she felt a tremendous force of heat. This red-hot sensation. This seems to be a quote from the person who went through this. There's a reference. You can see the reference in brackets, number 5, so you could always go look up the quote. When the technician came in, she said, "You burned me." The technician replied that this was not possible. Though there were no marks on her at the time, the treatment area felt warm to the touch. It is unclear exactly when AECL learned about this incident. Dr. Tim Still, the Kennestone physicist, says that he contacted AECL to ask if the Therac 25 could operate in electron mode without scanning to spread the beam. 3 days later, the engineers at AECL called the physicist back to explain that improper scanning was not possible. So they called tech support. Shreyas wasn't around to answer the question. Longtime viewers know that reference. And as a result, they said, no, this isn't possible. There's no way that you could have a misaligned beam of electrons, essentially. In an August 19, 1986 letter from AECL to the FDA, the AECL QA manager states, in March of 1986, AECL received a lawsuit from the patient involved. This incident was never reported to ACL prior to this date, although some rather odd questions had been posed by Tim Still, the hospital physicist. The physicist at a hospital in Tyler, Texas, where a later accident occurred, reported that, according to Tim Still, the patient filed suit in October 1985, listing the hospital, manufacturer, and service organization responsible for the machine. AECL was notified informally about the suit by the hospital, and AECL received official notification of a lawsuit in November 1985. So it's kind of weird that AECL says that the lawsuit was never received. Because of the lawsuit filed in 85, some AECL administrators must have known about the Marietta accident, although no investigation occurred at this time. There are further comments by FDA investigators that point back to the lack of a mechanism in AECL to follow up with reports of suspected accidents. The lack of follow-up in this case appears to be evidence of such a problem in the organization. Gee, what a shocker. You mean the people who decided that they were going to cheap out on hardware by running almost everything on software didn't have a proper process in place to look up complaints or even lawsuits filed with, at the very least, their names referenced? They didn't have a process to go look that up and figure out what was going on? Gee, color me shocked. Pikachu shock. The patient went home, but shortly afterward, she developed a reddening and swelling in the center of the treatment area. Her pain had increased to the point that her shoulder froze and she experienced spasms. She was then admitted to West Paces Ferry Hospital in Atlanta, but her oncologist continued to send her to Kennestone for Therac 25 treatments. Clinical explanation was sought for the reddening of the skin, which at first her oncologist attributed to her disease or to normal treatment reaction. About 2 weeks later, the physicist at Kennestone noticed that the patient had a matching reddening on her back, as though a burn had gone right through her body, and the swollen area had begun to slough off layers of skin. Her shoulder was immobile, and she was apparently in great pain. It was now obvious that she had a radiation burn, but the hospital and her doctors could provide no satisfactory explanation. Shortly afterward, she initiated a lawsuit against the hospital and AECL regarding her injury. The Kennestone physicist later estimated that she received 1 or 2 doses of radiation in the 15,000 to 20,000 rad range. How much radiation is that? He does not believe her injury could have been caused by less than 8,000 rads. Typical single therapeutic doses are in the 200 rad range. Doses of 1,000 rads can be fatal if delivered to the whole body, and in fact, the accepted figure for whole body radiation, which will cause death in 50% of cases, is 500 rads. Now, 15 to 20,000 rads to a portion of your body is not a one-to-one comparison of 500 rads to your entire body. But the magnitude of order increase to a portion of your body with that many rads. The consequences of an overdose to a smaller part of the body depends on the radiosensitivity of the tissue involved. The director of radiation oncology at the Kennestone facility explained their confusion about the accident as due to the fact that they had never seen an overtreatment of that magnitude before. Eventually, the patient's breast had to be removed due to the radiation burns. She completely lost the use of her shoulder and her arm was in continual pain. She had suffered a serious radiation burn, but the manufacturer and operators of the machine refused to believe that it could have been caused by the Therac 25. The treatment prescription printout feature was disabled at the time of the accident, so there was no hard copy of the treatment data. The treatment prescription printout feature was disabled at the time of the accident, so there was no hard copy of the treatment data. Oh, how convenient. So you can literally disable. Yeah, why can you disable that? You can literally disable the treatment data on a radiation machine, whereupon people go to get therapy for their various types of cancer. What? The lawsuit was eventually settled out of court. From what we can determine, the accident was not reported to the FDA until after the later Tyler accidents in '86, which we're about to get into. The medical device incident reporting regulations apply only to equipment manufacturers and importers, not users. The regulations require that manufacturers and importers report deaths, serious injuries, or malfunctions that could result in those consequences. Healthcare professionals and institutions were not required to report incidents to manufacturers at that time. So the regulation stuff, I get it. It's yada yada yada. All regulations are always a problem for all kinds of stuff. It's not really what I want to cover. I want to cover the software and hardware because that's mostly what we're trying to do here, right? And so this is just one example. So this is just one. There's, I believe, 6 of them in total, where even the simple fact that you can disable the output of what kind of radiation treatment was given by a radiation machine that could potentially cause serious bodily harm. The fact that you can disable that, even at a hardware level, let alone a software level, is absolutely mind-boggling. But it's even more than that. And we continue to make these idiotic decisions in tech today, and therefore we have, again, I'm going to point this right back, and I'm going to say this over and over again. We have massively overbloated websites with features nobody ever asked for that take forever to load and run. Same with software, and software is now just becoming web on your machine. That's really all it is. Everything is becoming webified, where web should never have penetrated into the spaces that it has. We have mobile apps that are absolutely stupid and annoying to use, and nobody's happy with it. The buggy, crashy, bloated video games suck for the most part, not always, but for the most part. You have to download 80 gigs and pay $500 for something that you're probably going to barely play. If you play it, it's going to sit on your Steam library, and then the DLC is going to come. It's going to be 120 gigs, and it's just absolutely mind-boggling. And that's not to speak of all the security issues that I go over on the Daily Tech News. That's not to speak of all the security leaks that happen. That's not to speak of all the dangerous things that this kind of software operates on inside of hardware that we typically use on a day-to-day basis across the globe. And so the Therac 25 is essentially one of the first, well, there might be a few prior to this one that I'm looking into, but this one is pretty heavily studied for the time, where software made a serious impact on people's actual health and well-being in real life, not in digital life, in real life. So let's continue. The Ontario Cancer Foundation in Hamilton, Ontario in 1985. A second accident occurred about 7 weeks after the Kenestone patient was overdosed. At that time, the Therac 25 at the Hamilton Clinic had been in use for more than 6 months. On July 26, 1985, a 40-year-old patient came to the clinic for her 24th Therac 25 treatment for carcinoma of the cervix. The operator activated the machine, but the Therac shut down after 5 seconds with an HTILT in capital letters, HTILT error message. No dose was shown, but by the Therac's dosimetry system display. The display also indicated a treatment pause. Since the machine did not suspend and the control display indicated no dose was delivered to the patient, the operator went ahead with a second attempt at treatment by pressing the P key, the proceed command, expecting the machine to deliver the proper dose this time. So the first attempt at sending the dose to this unfortunate cancer patient showed on display that the dose didn't actually happen. It didn't even get sent. The machine didn't even send the dose. And unfortunately, the operator took that for a fact and sent a second dose. This was standard operating procedure, and as described in Appendix B, Therac 25 operators had become accustomed to frequent malfunctions that had no untoward consequences for the patient. It's like I'm living in some weird time travel scenario where the sentences and ideas and common things that come out of software from the 80s exists today somehow. It's so strange. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I might be. My head might be too far up my own butt. But it's so strange to see that this was happening back then and hearing the same phrases. I think in particular, what's strange to me is that I have so many people who argue with me that things have gotten better, not worse. Software is better, hardware is better, everything's better. It's never been easier to distribute websites and have mass access to information and make money and all of that. It's never been better, it's never been easier, but we suffer from the same problems, and we do so at alarmingly higher rates than we ever have before. Yeah, Laughing Panda, this is how you get superpowers, yeah. Yeah, more complicated is not equal to better. I agree on Holy Diver, but I completely agree. I think the issue is that a lot of people do think that it is better. They think that more complication is better. They just don't explicitly say that. What they say is they package it in different terminology, which is pull in wheels that have been solved. That is logically necessarily more complicated. But that's not how they put it. They put it in as there are solved problems. How would you solve this problem without the complication? And then they actually argue complication in the reverse. They'll say it's easier to bring in a third-party library or a paradigm or a framework or whatever it is you're using to solve a problem. It's harder not to. That's what they say. It's more complicated not to. Because now you have spaghetti code and you have custom solutions, and good luck hiring people for that. And who's going to go read that code and maintain it? No one's going to do that. All that stuff. It's actually, they're taking a distorted and backwards and twisted view of complicated not equals better. And they're essentially just throwing it at people like me who are saying we need to have programmers who understand fundamentals and who understand how logic works. It shouldn't be that hard. But no, that's more complicated. Yeah, like Borrow Checker and lifetimes aren't more complicated. It's easy and makes software completely safe. That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. So, again, the machine shut down in the same manner. This process was repeated 4 times after the original attempt, the display showing no dose delivered to the patient each time. Yes, 4 times this was done. So 4 times the machine software said, no, there was no dose. 4 times the operator actually sent a dose of radiation to this poor, unfortunate cancer patient. After the 5th pause, the machine went into treatment suspend and a hospital service technician was called. The technician found nothing wrong with the machine. This was also not an unusual scenario, according to another Therac 25 operator with a reference there. After the treatment, the patient complained of a burning sensation, described as an electric tingling shock to the treatment area in her hip. 6 other patients were treated later that day without incident. She came back for further treatment on July 29 and complained of burning, hip pain, and excessive swelling in the region of treatment. The machine was taken out of service as radiation overexposure was suspected. The patient was hospitalized for the condition on July 30th. AECL was informed of the apparent radiation injury and sent a service engineer to investigate. The US FDA, the then Canadian Radiation Protection Bureau, and users were informed that there was a problem, although the users claimed they were never informed that a patient injury had occurred. Okay. Users were told that they should visually confirm the proper alignment of the turntable until further notice, which occurred 3 months later. The patient died on November 3rd, 1985, of an extremely virulent cancer. An autopsy revealed the cause of death as the cancer, but it was noted that had she not died, A total hip replacement would have been necessary as a result of the radiation overexposure. An AECL technician later estimated the patient had received between 13,000 and 17,000 rads. That's a lot of rads. And it's not the good type of rads. AECL could not reproduce the malfunction, but suspected a transient failure in the microswitch used to determine the position of the turntable. During the investigation of the accident, AECL hardwired the error conditions they assumed were necessary for the malfunction. So essentially, they just adjusted the software to try and recreate the edge case. And as a result, found some design weaknesses and potential mechanical problems involving the turntable positioning. The computer senses and controls turntable position by reading a 3-bit signal about the status of 3 microswitches in the turntable switch assembly. See Appendix A. Let me go down to... We're not going to read all of this. We're just going to read a few here. Turntable positioning. So there's a 3-bit binary signal which determines things like which switches are on and off and where to essentially align the shot, let's say, the firing of the radiation, right? And so you can see that there's a switch assembly, a turntable switch assembly, and a targeting system with magnets and counterweights and mirrors and things like that. And not all of this do I understand, but there it is. Now, continuing on, the problem was exacerbated by the design of the mechanism that extends a plunger to lock the turntable when it is in one of the 3 cardinal positions. The plunger could be extended when the turntable was way out of position, thus giving a second false position indication, which essentially means that somebody was checking for the plunger status and assuming that if the plunger was extended, then there was a cardinal position in play, when in fact this was not the case. AECL devised a method to indicate turntable position that tolerated a 1-bit error. For example, the code would still unambiguously reveal correct position with any one microswitch failure. In addition, the software was altered so that the computer checked for in-transit status of the switches in order to keep further track of the switch operations and position of the turntable, and to give additional assurances that these switches were working and the turntable was moving. As a result of the improvements, AECL claimed in its report and correspondence with hospitals that analysis of the hazard rate of the new solution indicates an improvement over the old system by at least 5 orders of magnitude. However, when they submitted their report to the FDA, they're like, I don't know what happened, cannot confirm on the exact cause of the accident, can only suspect. So they didn't actually know. They said it was inconclusive what happened to this patient, but then they go in and they attempt to determine why the software would do what it did, and they fix a bunch of problems supposedly, and then they go 5 orders of magnitude safer. And even if all of that is true, I'm going to ask, how unsafe is 5 orders of magnitude? Go look up what an order of magnitude is. Yeah, Laughly. I just fixed bug, which makes my software 1,000 orders of magnitude better. Yeah. So then they go back again into the legal claims. They go into the regulations. They go into the regulatory board that studied them, or well, that asked questions about them, and so on. Let's move on to the next one. Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital, Yakima, Washington, 1985. In this accident, like the Kennestone overdose, machine malfunction was not acknowledged until after later accidents were understood. The Therac 25 at Yakima or Yakima, pronunciation is probably lost on me, I apologize, had been modified by AECL in September of 1985 in response to the overdose at Hamilton. During December 1985, a woman came in for treatment with a Therac 25. She developed arrhythmia, excessive reddening of the skin, in a parallel striped pattern at one port side or her right hip after one of the treatments. Despite this, she continued to be treated by the Therac 25 as the cause of her reaction was not determined to be abnormal until January or February of 1986. On January 6, 1986, her treatments were completed. The skin reaction was monitored closely, and the staff attempted to find possible causes for it. The open slots in the blocking trays in the Therac 25 could have produced such a striped pattern, but by the time that the skin reaction had been determined to be abnormal, the blocking trays had been discarded, so the blocking arrangement and tray striping orientation could not be reproduced. A reaction to chemotherapy was ruled out because that should have produced reactions at the other ports and would not have produced stripes. When it was discovered that the woman slept with a heating pad, a possible explanation was offered on the basis of the parallel wires that deliver the heat in such pads. The staff x-rayed the heating pad and discovered that the wired pattern did not correspond to the erythema pattern on the patient's hip. I pronounced that wrong several times. Again, I apologize. Erythema. The hospital staff sent a letter to AECL on January 31st, and they also spoke on the phone with a tech support supervisor. On February 24, 1986, the company tech supervisor sent a written response to the director of radiation therapy at Yakima stating, after careful consideration, we are of the opinion that this damage could not have been produced by any malfunction of the Therac 25 or by any operator error. The letter goes on to support this opinion by listing 2 pages of technical reasons why an overdose by the Therac 25 was impossible, along with the additional argument that there has apparently been no other instances of similar damage to this or other patients. The letter ends, in closing, I wish to advise that this matter has been brought to the attention of our Hazards Committee as is normal practice. Now, you do have to remember one thing here. Well, remember 2 things. On the one hand, you have an issue that happened. Let's go back up here. 1985. In November 1985, the 1985 incident that we read about, the first one, had already taken place, and the regulatory boards had already been in communication with this company and told them to get their act together. Then you have a response in February of 1986, only a few months later, and they're saying, nope, not our problem. And this happens a lot in software in general, including websites. Consumers, this is actually kind of like an allegory or a comparison of what happens today. Consumers don't even know how to complain about the stuff that they see that is produced shoddily these days. They don't even know how to complain about it. Because for a consumer, the issue with a bad game that crashes all the time, doesn't look quite right, the graphics don't really render correctly, the gameplay kind of sucks, there are really no new features, there's nothing really innovative, the website kind of sucks, the mobile apps keep crashing, it's really slow, sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's not. Those are the most confusing cases when things sometimes work and then they don't work, and you can't really pinpoint a reason why. It's difficult to tell. And how does a consumer know the difference? How does a consumer understand what's going on under the hood? How does a consumer even know how to complain about it? How does a consumer even know that there's anything better that could exist? Why would a consumer complain if what they have in the current technical landscape is the best that they can have? This goes for hardware too. Hardware has been going downhill as well. How many people have complained about issues with their battery on their laptops or sleep operations? We've gone, just as recently as yesterday, we went into some Windows React stuff. I'm doing an even deeper dive on that. There's a lot of stuff that consumers, aka operators, like here with the Therac 25 machine, they don't even know how to complain because they can't really tell what's going on. That's why I do these streams, even though they are boring. Because hopefully people who are not in the programming space also pick up a thing or two. And when they run across a problem that makes their technical experience absolute dog shit, they can point at something to go, okay, I understand what's going on. Programmers have been neutered. I understand that kind of like as a high level concept. Programmers don't know how to write quality stuff anymore, not necessarily because they're dumb, but because of the decisions of the tech industry. I can kind of understand that. So maybe there's something going on here where like maybe the software quality is bad, or maybe just bad hardware was created or something like that. And I can at least talk about that. I can at least complain. At least I know that this isn't something I have to put up with as a consumer. That would be huge if we could get more consumers understanding what I'm trying to put out there so that they can point to something and go, look, I'm not happy with it. And good luck finding consumer satisfaction reports on information like this. It's either hidden away behind people who have the information but don't say anything, kind of like what's going on with the Therac 25 machine, or people just aren't getting that information. The hospital staff eventually ascribed the skin tissue problem to cause unknown in a report written on this first Yakima incident after another Yakima overdose a year later. The medical physicist involved wrote, "At the time, we didn't believe the patient was overdosed because the manufacturer had additional hardware and software safety measures." In a letter from the manufacturer on the 16th of September in 85, it stated that the analysis of the hazard rate resulting from these modifications indicates an improvement of at least 5 orders of magnitude, with such an improvement in safety, which is, by the way, 10 million %. That's what magnitude of orders means. It's not multiplicative. I'm a high school dropout, okay? And I know it's not it has multiplicative functions or additive functions inside of it, but magnitude of order is like a jump in the multiplication table, if you want to look at it that way. It's 10 million %. We did not believe that there could have been any accelerator malfunction. Now, the users don't have the ability to investigate the possibility of machine malfunction further. They weren't aware of any other incidents. They were told there had been none. There was no reason for them to continue looking. However, it seems that the fact that 3 similar incidents had occurred with this equipment should have triggered some suspicion, an investigation by the manufacturer and the appropriate government agencies. Everything was well reported and known to the company and the regulators. So, there's a problem here that they point to, right? Let's read the next one. East Texas Cancer Center, Tyler, Texas, March 1986. More is known about the Tyler accidents than the others because of the diligent efforts of the Tyler Hospital physicist, Fritz Hager, without whom the understanding of the software problems may have been delayed even further. The Therac 25 was at the East Texas Cancer Center, ETCC, for 2 years before the first serious accident, and more than 500 patients had been treated. On March 21, 1986, a male patient came into ETCC for his ninth treatment of the Therac 25. one of a series prescribed as a follow-up of the removal of a tumor from his back. Hang on, folks. Hang on. Okay. This treatment was to be a 22 million electron volt electron beam treatment of 180 rads over a 10 centimeter by 17 centimeter field on the upper back, and had a little to the left of his and a little to the left of his spine, or a total of 6,000 rads over a 6.5-week period. He was taken into the treatment room and was placed face down on the treatment table. The operator then left the treatment room, closed the door, and sat at the control terminal. The operator had held this job for some time, and her typing efficiency had increased with experience. This one is particularly interesting. She could quickly enter prescription data and change it conveniently with the Therax editing features. She entered the patient's description data quickly, then noticed that she had typed X for X-ray when she had intended E for electron mode. This was a common mistake, as most of the treatments involved X-rays, and she had gotten used to typing this. The mistake was easy to fix. She merely used the up arrow key to edit the mode entry. Since the other parameters she had entered were correct, she hit the return key several times and left their values unchanged. She reached the bottom of the screen where it was indicated that the parameters had been verified, and the terminal displayed beam ready as expected. She hit the one key command, B for beam on, to begin the treatment. After a moment, the machine shut down, and the console displayed a message saying, "Malfunction 54." The machine also displayed a treatment pause, indicating a problem of low priority. The sheet on the side of the machine explained that this malfunction was a dose input 2 error. The ETCC, the hospital, did not have any other information available in its instruction manual or other Therac 25 documentation to explain the meaning of malfunction 54. An AECL technician later testified that dose input 2 meant that a dose had been delivered that was either too high or too low. I want you to remember that part. There was a confusing error message that they did not know what it meant. The machine showed a substantial underdose on its dose monitor display, i.e. 6 monitor units delivered, whereas 202 monitor units had been requested by the operator. The operator was accustomed to the quirks of the machine, which would frequently stop or delay treatment. In the past, the only consequences had been inconvenience. She immediately took the normal action when the machine merely paused, which was to hit the P key to proceed with the treatment. The machine promptly shut down with the same malfunction 54 error and the same underdose shown by the dosimetry. The operator was isolated from the patient since the machine apparatus was inside a shielded room of its own. The only way that the operator could be alerted to patient difficulty was through audio and video monitors. On this day, the video display was unplugged and the audio monitor was broken. On this day, on this very day, I just want to summarize what's happened up to this point, and watch out for my military video tomorrow from the Enlightened Programming stream. It's one of the best videos I've done, and it covers exactly this very similar scenario in military operations. I can't remember exactly what the specifics were. It's in that video. But there was a military piece of software. I believe it was something to do with the navigation system of a carrier. And it was failing so often, or it was giving confusing error messages that they couldn't understand so often, that the operators of that software were literally shutting down certain aspects of the software because they just got so fed up with getting information that they didn't understand that had, for the most part, no impact on what they had to do. And that was in the early 2000s, I believe, if I remember the story correctly. And here we are in the 80s. And it's the same thing. You have confusing error messages. The outputs do not describe what's truly going on. Who is it? Unholy Diver, not having a way to tell if it's too high or too low. That's insane. Unholy, that's a great call out. That's insane. And then on this very day, on this day, on my daughter, on this day, how do you do it? On this day, on my daughter's wedding. I can't do the mob thing, but you know what I mean, right? The mafia thing. On this day, on my daughter's birthday. The video display was unplugged and the audio monitor was broken, which means that the patient inside the room receiving this overdose by the failures, not only the failures of the software and the hardware, but also by the fact that this person was so accustomed to this that the operator got efficient at pushing the buttons to move things on. All of this stuff added up. And then what happened? Friendly Creative, thank you for the follow on Twitch. I appreciate it, man. The first attempt to treat him, the patient, said that he felt like he had received an electric shock or that someone had poured hot coffee on his back. He felt a thump and heat and heard a buzzing sound from the equipment. Imagine if the UI for the machines were React, it'd be even worse, yeah. Since this was his 9th treatment, he knew that this was not normal. He began to get up from the treatment table to go for help. I just want to explain what's happening. He felt a thump, the patient, on the table, felt a thump and heat and heard a buzzing sound from the equipment. Exactly what we want to hear out of the radiation machine. Since this was his 9th treatment, his brain logically goes, this isn't normal. So he begins to get up from the treatment table to go get help. It was at this moment that the operator hit the P key to proceed with the treatment. Bros. The patient stated that he felt like his arm was being shocked by electricity and that his hand was leaving his body. He went and pounded on the door of the treatment room. The operator was shocked and immediately opened the door for him. He appeared visibly shaken and upset. That is fucking insane. That's like Final Destination level. The patient was immediately examined by a physician who observed intense erythema over the treatment area, but suspected nothing more than serious electric shock. He was discharged and sent home with instructions to return if he suffered any further reactions. The hospital physicist was called in, and he found the machine calibration within specifications. The meaning of the malfunction was not understood, of the malfunction message was not understood. The machine was then used to treat patients for the rest of the day. In actuality, but unknown to anyone at that time, the patient had received a massive overdose concentrated in the center of the treatment area. After the fact simulations of the accident revealed possible doses of 16,500 to 25,000 rads in less than 1 second over an area of about 1 centimeter. Bro, this shit is depressing. Over the weeks following the accident, the patient continued to have pain in his neck and shoulder. He lost the function of his left arm and had periodic bouts of nausea and vomiting. He was eventually hospitalized for radiation-induced myelitis of the cervical cord causing paralysis of his left arm and both legs, left vocal cord paralysis, which left him unable to speak, neurogenic bowel and bladder, and paralysis of the left diaphragm. He also had a lesion on his left lung and recurrent herpes simplex skin infections. He died from complications of the overdose 5 months after the accident. And people say I'm crazy. People call me crazy. People think I need to take my meds. I've had popular tech influencers tell me that I need to get off the internet and go spend time with my family instead of complaining about this shit. User and manufacturer response. The Therac 25 was shut down for testing the day after this accident. One local AECL engineer and one from the Home Office in Canada came to the hospital in Texas to investigate. They spent a day running the machine through tests, but could not reproduce a malfunction 54. So they go home, and they say it's not possible for the Therac 25 to overdose a patient. The Texas physicist claims that he asked AECL at this time if there were any other reports of radiation overexposure, and that the AECL personnel, including the QA manager, told him that no accidents involving radiation overexposure by the Therac 25 were known to AECL. Remember, this is in 86. The 85 incident had already been put into the ethos of legality and regulation, and letters were sent to the company about it. This seems odd since AECL was surely at least aware of the Hamilton accident that had occurred 7 months before, the Yakima accident, and even by their account learned of the Georgia lawsuit around this time, which had been filed 4 months earlier. The AECL engineers then suggested that this accident might have been caused by an electrical problem. The electric shock theory was checked out thoroughly by an independent engineering firm. The final report indicated that there was no electrical grounding problem in the machine, and it did not appear capable of giving a patient an electrical shock. The physicist at the ETCC checked out the calibration of the Therac 25 and found it satisfactory. They put the machine back into service on April 7, 1986, convinced it was performing properly. Now, unfortunately, this hospital got hit again. 3 weeks later, on Friday, April 11th, 1986, another male patient was scheduled to receive an electron treatment at the hospital for skin cancer on the side of his fucking face. Fuck me. The prescription was for 10 million electron volts to an area of approximately 7 centimeters by 10 centimeters. The same technician who had treated the first Tyler accident that we just read about, where that person died, prepared this patient for treatment. Much of what follows is from the deposition of the Tyler Therac 25 operator. As with her former patient, she entered the prescription data and then noticed an error in the mode. Again, she used the edit up arrow key to change the mode from X-ray to electron. After she finished editing, she pressed the return key several times to place the cursor on the bottom of the screen. She saw the beam ready message displayed and turned the beam on. Within a few seconds, the machine shut down, making a loud noise audible via the, thankfully, now working intercom. The display showed malfunction 54 again. The operator rushed into the treatment room, hearing her patient moaning for help. He began to remove the tape that had held his head in position and said something was wrong. She asked him what he felt, and he replied, "Fire," on the side of his face. She immediately went to the hospital physicist and told him that another patient appeared to have been burned. The physicist asked the patient about his experience. He explained that something had hit him on the side of the face. He saw a flash of light, and he heard a sizzling sound reminiscent of frying eggs. He was very agitated, no shit, and asked, "What happened to me? What happened to me?" This patient died from the overdose on May 1st, 1986, 3 weeks after the accident. Fuck, man. He had disorientation, which progressed to coma, fever to 104 Fahrenheit, and neurological damage. Autopsy showed an acute, high-dose radiation injury to the right temporal lobe of the brain and the brain stem. What a fucking celebration stream, huh? What a celebration stream. This shit is depressing, but this is the kind of shit that I talk about all the time. I am not crazy. The stuff we build in this industry has serious impacts to people you might care about in your everyday life. You have no fucking clue how it can impact a person's life. And all of the stupid decisions that your software makes, and I'm not just pointing the finger at programmers, like you can very clearly see there's a QA manager here involved, there are executives involved, there are business decisions involved, there are corners cut to cut expenses. All of that shit still happens today. And the stupid part, the most idiotic part, is that you could make more money by building shit that's safer than this. And to this day, we don't do it with better hardware and better software. User and manufacturer response. Or are there people on YouTube? There are. What's up, Vamp? What's up, Moldy? No, Vamp, it's never going to happen. Just deal with it. It's never happening. Shut up, Moldy. I don't like either one of you. You both suck. YouTube chat sucks. After this latest Tyler accident, the machine was immediately taken out of service by the physicist at the ETCC, and he called AECL to alert them to the second apparent overexposure. The Tyler physicist then began a careful investigation of his own. He worked with the operator, who remembered exactly what she had done on this occasion. After a great deal of effort, they were eventually able to elicit the malfunction 54 message. They determined that data entry speed during entity was the key factor. That's what caused it. Operator was too fast. Operator got so used to the messages and whatever, too fast. What's up, Kavid on YouTube? Yeah, Twitch chat rules. Yeah, the people, not the feature. Yeah. Sparrow can't even use a phone to take call-ins. No, I can't. I actually wouldn't even use the phone. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't even do it. It took some practice before the physicist could repeat the procedure rapidly enough to elicit the malfunction 54 message at will. Once he could do this, he set about measuring the actual dose delivered under the error condition. He took a measurement of about 804 rads, but realized that the ion chamber had become saturated. This is how the Hulk was created, by the way. After making adjustments to extend his measurement ability, he determined that the dose was somewhere over 4,000 rads. The next day, an engineer from AECL called and said that he could not reproduce the error. After the Tyler physicist explained that the procedure had to be performed rapidly, AECL could finally produce a similar malfunction on its own machine. AECL then set up its own set of measurements to test the dosage delivered. 2 days after the accident, AECL said it had measured the dosage at the center of the field to be 25,000 rads. And I just want you to remember that 500 rads as a whole body dose is enough to 404 you. In fact, it is not possible to determine the exact dose received by each of the accident victims. The total dose delivered during the malfunction conditions was found to vary enormously when the faults were simulated at different clinics. The number of pulses delivered in the 0.3 seconds that elapsed before interlock shutoff varied due to the fact that the startup pulse repetition frequency was adjusted by the software to very different values on different machines. Therefore, there is still some uncertainty as to the doses actually received in the accidents. Related Therac 20 problems. So Therac 25 inherited some problems from Therac 20, which goes back to the beginning of the article where we read about how the Therac 25 software inherited coroutines in the software from Therac 20 and even Therac 6. After the Tyler accidents, the users of the Therac 20, who had heard informally about the Tyler accidents from Therac 25 users, conducted informal investigations to determine if the same problem could occur on their machines. As noted earlier, the software for the Therac 25 and Therac 20 both evolved from the Therac 6 software. Additional functions had to be added because the Therac 20 and Therac 25 operated in both X-ray and electron mode, while the Therac 6 only has X-ray mode. The CGR employees modified the software for the Therac 20 to handle the dual modes. When the Therac 25 development began, AECL engineers adapted the software from the Therac 6, but they also borrowed software routines from the Therac 20 to handle electron mode, which that kind of makes sense. You have a Therac 20 machine, it does both modes. Therac 25 is based on that, so it kind of makes sense that you're going to copy some things, right? But again, Therac 6 and 20 had hardware safeties. So, a physicist at the University of Chicago Joint Center for Radiation Therapy heard about the software problem and decided to dig in to see if they could recreate things with Therac 20. At first, the physicist was unable to reproduce the error in his machine, but 2 months later he found the link. The Therac 20 at the University of Chicago is used to teach students in a radiation therapy school conducted by the center. The physicist at the center, Frank Borger, noticed that whenever a new class of students started using the Therac 20, fuses and breakers in the machine tripped, shutting down the unit. These failures, which had been occurring ever since they had acquired the machine, might occur 3 times a week while new students operated the machine and then disappeared for months. Borger determined that new students make lots of different types of mistakes and use creative methods of editing parameters on the console. Through experimentation, he found that certain editing sequences correlated with blown fuses and determined that the same computer bug as in the Therac 25 software was responsible. The physicists notified the FDA, which notified Therac 20 users. The software error was only a nuisance for Therac 20. Why? Because the machine has independent hardware protective circuits for monitoring the electron beam scanning. So the protective circuits would not allow the beam to turn on, so there's no radiation danger. But Therac 25 relies on software. One of the lessons learned is that focusing on particular software bugs is not the way to make a safe system. Virtually all complex software can be made to behave in an unexpected fashion under some conditions. The basic mistakes made here involve poor software engineering practices and building a machine that relies on the software for safe operation. Self-driving cars, anyone? Software on your TV, anyone? Wi-Fi requirements for your dishwasher, anyone? Which is a real thing, I'm not making that up. Further, the particular coding error is not as important as the general unsafe design of the software overall. Examining the particular part of the code blamed for the Tyler accidents is instructive, however, in demonstrating the overall design flaws. The following description of the problem is taken from the description provided by AECL for the FDA, although we have tried to clarify it somewhat. The description leaves some unanswered questions, but it is the best we can do with the information that we have. As described in Appendix C, the treatment monitor task treat controls the various phases of treatment by executing its 8 subroutines. The treatment phase indicator variable, T-phase, is used to determine which subroutine should be executed. Following the execution of a particular subroutine, treat reschedules itself. One of treat's subroutines, called datent, data entry, communicates with the keyboard handler task, a task that runs concurrently with treat via a shared variable, data entry completion flag, to determine if the prescription data has been entered. The keyboard handler recognizes the completion of data entry and changes the data entry completion variable to denote this, on or off, complete or incomplete. Once the data entry completion variable is set, the datent subroutine detects the change in status of the variable, like a watcher, and changes the value of T-phase from 1, which is data entry, to 3, which is setup test. In this case, the datent subroutine exits back to the treat subroutine, which will reschedule itself and begin execution of the setup subroutine. If the data completion variable has not been set, datent leaves the value of T-phase unchanged and exits back to treat's mainline. Treat will then reschedule itself, essentially rescheduling the entire subroutine from the start. The command line at the lower right-hand corner of the screen is the cursor's normal position when the operator has completed all the necessary changes. They plugged in the prescription, how much the dosage is, etc. Editing the prescription is signified by movement of the cursor off of the command line. So you can see kind of the flow and the different phases and what's required in order to move across the phase. And some phases require data entry, which is a global variable. It watches that, and then it moves forward to the phase when data entry is detected. At least those aren't made by single persons over the span of multiple years, yes. As the program was originally designed, the data entry completion variable by itself is not sufficient, since it does not ensure that the cursor is located on the command line, and under the right circumstances, the data entry phase can be exited before all edit changes are made on the screen. It's essentially a timing error. It's a runtime condition where you can press the buttons to move your cursor off of the prescription editing screen faster than the program can understand that you've changed or adapted the phase in some fashion, and it can do something that is not in line with what you're currently inputting as the operator. So the software essentially has a race condition. Yeah, input race condition. That's right. The keyboard handler, parses the mode and energy level specified by the operator and places an encoded result in another shared variable, the 2-byte mode energy offset variable, MEOS. The low order byte of this variable is used by another task, hand, to set the collimator turntable to the proper position for the selected mode energy. The high order byte of the MEOS variable is used by datent to set several operating parameters. Initially, the data entry process forces the operator to enter the mode and energy, except when the photon mode is selected, in which case the energy defaults to 25 million electron volts. The operator can later edit the mode and energy separately. If the data entry completion variable is set by the keyboard handler before the data is in MEOS is changed by the operator, the change in MEOS will not be detected by datent since it has already exited and will not be re-entered again. The upper collimator, or the turntable, on the other hand, is set to the position dictated by the low byte order of MEOS by another concurrently running task CAN, and can therefore be inconsistent with the parameters set in accordance with the information in the high order byte of MEOS. So essentially, they had some shared variables, and there were some tasks that needed to run, one to do positioning and editing of the prescription, and one to actually begin the process of firing that off. And what happens is they have two concurrent tasks. This is just microservices, but in the microcosm of the Therac 25, you had two concurrently running microservices out in the cloud, and they both ran but didn't synchronize with each other to determine whether one should run after the other or one should run at all, whatever the case was. And so then you have a race condition where the operator is still inputting the required data to make the radiation machine run, and then but the machine is thinking, I actually do need to run. There appear to be no checks included in the software to detect such an incompatibility. And so then it goes on to describe that there's a clock cycle with a bunch of subroutines that determine, and here's even the logic. They went down into the logic, if else then statements, jump over, go back to beginning, or operate this or operate that. And you can see that what they have here are two routines that run concurrently. And if you enter in the data at the right moment, you can trigger both to run at the same time, even if one of those coroutines actually goes to the second coroutine and says you shouldn't run. By that time, it's too late. It's already running. It's in a process that is non-exitable, which is not a word. Now, again, the Therac 6 and the Therac 20, the predecessors, had hardware safety mechanisms that would have prevented this. But because people wanted to cut corners, and people wanted to lie, and people wanted to make money, and the software operations in and of themselves were not well put together, you literally had an 8-second window to make this happen. There's an 8-second window that you can make this happen, which means that you don't have to be particularly fast. You just have to be practiced in entering the prescription and pressing the buttons and running this thing, and you could 404 people with high amounts of radiation because of the software that was in it. So then they go back into the regulatory aspects and legal things and lawsuits. They essentially wanted to force this company to make changes. It did. They had to make a report. The company itself had to make a report about why this happened. And an interesting aspect of this was that other people who used the machine had to provide their own mechanisms, and guess what kind of mechanisms they were. Several users described additional hardware safety features that they had added to their own machines to provide additional protection. An interlock that checked gun current values, which the Vancouver clinic had previously added to their Therac 25, was labeled as redundant by AECL. The users disagreed. So the company's like, no, bro, you don't need to add your own hardware checks. There were further discussions of poor design and other problems that caused a 10 to 30% underdosing in both modes. So it wasn't even overdosing, it was also underdosing. So this company just basically doubled down on everything they were doing. There's no problem. Everything's fine. This doesn't happen very often. This, we can't recreate this. Works on my machine, bro. You have to be really practiced and proficient in doing the edits. We will have a fix for that. How many people actually suffered from this, etc., etc. All the same bullshit excuses you hear in the tech industry today, because these people have rotted brains. They cannot think past the thing that they're working on to see the consequences of what they're doing, and once they're faced with it, they can't deal with that fact, and they cope by gaslighting everyone else around them. That's it's the state of tech today. Nothing's changed. So then they responded on September 26th, which I believe was in 86, I believe, with several, maybe it was a bit later, with several documents describing the software and its modifications, but no test plan. So they just added, they literally just DLC'd the Therac 25 and didn't test the DLC. I just can't. Incoming patch, no test on the patch. We fixed the problem, but we don't actually have a test to see if the problem was fixed. Now, the suffering continues. On Saturday, January 17th, 1987, the second patient of the day was to be treated for a carcinoma. The patient was to receive 2 film verification exposures of 4 and 3 rads, plus a 79 rad photon treatment for a total exposure of 86 rads. Film was placed under the patient and 4 rads were administered with the collimator jaws open to 22 by 18 centimeters. After the machine paused, the collimator jaws opened to 35 by 35 centimeters automatically, and the second exposure of 3 rads was administered. The machine paused again. The operator entered the treatment room to remove the film and verify the patient's precise position. He used the hand control in the treatment room to rotate the turntable to the field light position, allowing him to check the alignment of the machine with respect to the patient's body in order to verify proper beam position. He then either pressed the set button on the hand control or he left the room and typed a set command at the console in order to return the turntable to the proper position for treatment. There is some confusion as to exactly what transpired. When he left the room, he forgot to remove the film from underneath the patient. The console displayed beam ready, and the operator hit the B key to turn the beam on. The beam came on, but there was no dose or dose rate displayed on the console. After 5 or 6 seconds, the unit shut down with a pause and displayed a message. The message may have disappeared quickly. The operator was unclear at this point. However, since the machine merely paused, he was able to push the P key to proceed with treatment. The machine paused again, this time displaying flatness on the reason line. The operator heard the patient say something over the intercom, but couldn't understand him. He went into the room to speak with the patient, who reported feeling a burning sensation in the chest. The console displayed only the total dose of the 2 film exposures, 7 rads, and nothing more. The patient developed a skin burn over the entire treatment area later in the day. 4 days later, the redness developed a striped pattern matching the slots in the blocking tray. The stripe pattern was similar to the burn a year earlier at the very same hospital, which had been labeled as cause unknown, caused by the very same machine that was being used in this. We just read it. AECL began an investigation, and users were told to confirm the turntable position visually before turning on the beam. All tests run by the AECL engineers indicated that the machine was working perfectly. From the information that had been gathered to that point, it was suspected that the electron beam had come on when the turntable was in the field light position, but they could not reproduce the fault condition that produced the overdose. On the following Thursday, AECL sent an engineer from Ottawa to investigate. The hospital physicist, in the meantime, ran some tests with film. He placed a film in the beam of the Therac and then ran 2 exposures of X-ray parameters with a turntable in field light position. The film appeared to match the film that was left by mistake under the patient during the accident. After a week of checking the hardware, AECL determined that the incorrect machine operation was probably not caused by hardware alone. After checking the software, they discovered a flaw that could explain the erroneous behavior. The coding problems explaining this accident differ from those associated with the Tyler accidents. Preliminary dose measurements by AECL indicated that the dose delivered under these conditions, example when the turntable was in the field light position, was in the order of 4,000 to 5,000 rads. After 2 attempts, the patient could have received 8,000 to 10,000 instead of the 86 rads prescribed. Users were again called on Jan 26, 9 days after the accident, and given detailed instructions on how to avoid this problem. In an FDA internal report on the accident, an AECL quality assurance manager investigating the problem is quoted as stating that the software and hardware changes to be retrofitted following the Tyler accident 9 months later, but which had not yet been installed, would have prevented the Yakima accident. The patient died in April from complications related to the overdose. He had a terminal form of cancer, but lawsuits were initiated by his survivors, alleging that he died sooner than he would have and endured unnecessary pain and suffering due to the radiation overdose. The suit was settled out of court. So we have a third 404ing. What was the software bug? There is speculation that the Hamilton accident was the same as the second Yakima overdose. In a report of a conference call on January 26, 1987, between the QA manager and Ed Miller of the FDA discussing it, Mr. Miller notes, this situation probably occurred in Hamilton, Ontario, in the Hamilton, Ontario accident a couple of years ago. It was not discovered at that time, and the cause was attributed to intermittent interlock failure. The subsequent recall of the multiple microswitch logic network did not really solve the problem. And so the software flaw is even diagrammed out. So they have a set of bits which flag certain conditions. And during the setup phase being, if you recall what we just talked about with regards to this particular incident, the setup phase would be somebody's on the table and you need to figure out if they're lined up correctly. And so there's a field light. We covered this. We saw this on the diagram earlier on. So there's a particular portion of the room where the field light helps you to see and spot the lineup of the area that you want to bombard with this radiation. Well, not really bombard, but although they get bombarded. And make sure that it aligns with where the radiation comes from. So you align that up right with the field light. Then what has to happen is you have to put it in a phase that's essentially a test phase. I'm about to set this person up to make sure that they're properly aligned. And in so doing, there is a software bug where the bits are improperly set. Or better, I think better put, I think it describes it because I've read it before. There is a race condition where you set up the test phase, but it triggers an actual implementation phase instead because it's a runtime condition. So yes, exactly. This gives rise to an unverified condition at the console. The patient setup is then completed in the treatment room and all relevant parameters now verify. A message is displayed on the console to press set button while the turntable is in the field light position, the operator presses the set button on the hand control or types set. That should set the collimator to the proper position for treatment. In the software, after the prescription is entered and verified by the data entry routine, the phase is changed so that the setup test routine is entered. Every pass through this routine increments the upper position or the binary bits that check the position that should be called a shared variable called class 3. If class 3 is non-zero, there is an inconsistency and treatment shouldn't proceed. A 0 value for class 3 indicates that the relevant parameters are consistent with treatment and the beam is not inhibited or should just proceed as per normal. Then setup test checks for malfunctions, and then there's a routine that does the interlocking to see if there's a non-zero value. The interlocking check is performed by a housekeeper task called HKeeper. And again, they check for particular values to ensure that there are hardware states that are correct before it executes. Because of this incrementation, just leaving that there. Just leaving that there. Yep. The incrementation happens such that a buffer overflow exceeds the bounds of 255, goes on 256, sets a value to 0, and 0 becomes an acceptance value for the beginning of sending the radiation to the patient. And this value can be exceeded. 255 can go to 256/0 under all kinds of different circumstances. It would be difficult. Yeah, Russian roulette. Yeah, it would be difficult to tell when this would happen because who actually increments the value? Who keeps track of that, right? And so the fix was obviously make sure that you're checking the values correctly, yada, 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 all the stuff that you would typically do for buffer overflow stuff. And then they talk again about the FDA and all of that. So there you go. Those are the incidents that happen with the Therac 25 machine. They talk about some of these software engineering practices that should be done. This was particularly interesting. Some basic software engineering principles that were apparently violated in the case of the Therac 25 include: documentation should not be an afterthought. Software quality assurance practices and standards should be established. Designs should be kept simple. Ways to get information about errors, for example, software audit trails, should be designed into the software from the beginning. The software should be subjected to extensive testing and formal analysis at the module and software level. System testing alone is not adequate. Gee, where have we heard this before? But what's worse now is that we offload a lot of these responsibilities to third-party packages, libraries, frameworks, paradigms, tools, etc., etc. Furthermore, dun dun dun, what I've been saying. Furthermore, important lessons about software reuse can be found here. You guys ready? A naive assumption is often made that reusing software or using commercial off-the-shelf software will increase safety since the software will have been exercised extensively. Well, holy fucking shit. Reusing software modules does not guarantee safety in the new system to which it is transferred, and sometimes leads to awkward and dangerous designs. Safety is a quality of the system in which the software is used. It is not a quality of the software itself. Rewriting the entire software in order to get a clean and simple design may be safer in many cases. Taking a couple of programming courses or programming a home computer does not qualify anyone to produce safety-critical software. Shade thrown. Although certification of software engineers is not yet required, more events like those associated with the Therac 25 will make such certification inevitable. Really? Because that's not what I'm seeing today. There is activity currently in Britain to specify required courses for those working on critical software. Any engineer is not automatically qualified to be a software engineer. An extensive program of study and experience is required. Safety critical software requires training and experience in addition to that required for non-critical software. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you motherfucking kidding me? Did I miss a bit? Which bit, Laugh? Let me see. They got one guy to program the Therac 25 was a hobbyist. Oh, I missed that. You're right. It is. I thought it was later on. Did I miss it? I thought it was later on. Over a few years. Hang on. Did I skip it already, or was it later? Let me see. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find if I actually missed that because I thought it was later down in the paper. I don't know. I don't think I missed it, guys. If it was really a hobbyist, you can't even blame him, right? Yeah, I'm not sure that I missed it. Yeah, I don't think I missed it here. I don't see it. I don't see I don't see a reference to the person. I thought it was later on in this paper. Yep, software engineering, good basic stuff. Yeah, they talk about it. Safety has to be built in. Okay, yes. Certainly could have improved. Sure, there's that one. Then they talk about regulation and safety. Yep. Yeah, they do risk assessment at the Air Force. Yes. Yeah, I don't think it's here. I think it's like later on in a reference. Yeah. Yes. Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is this in particular talks about the programmer and the testing that they did. There's very little software documentation produced during development. In a 1986 internal FDA memo, a reviewer lamented, unfortunately, the AECL response seems to point out an apparent lack of documentation on software specifications and a software test plan. The manufacturer says that the hardware and software were tested and exercised separately or together over many years. In his deposition for one of the lawsuits, the quality assurance manager explained that testing was done in two parts. A small amount of software testing was done on a simulator, but most of the testing was done as a system. It appears that unit and software testing was minimal, with most of the effort directed at an integration system test. At a Therac 25 users meeting, the same QA manager stated that the Therac 25 software was tested for 2,700 hours. Under questioning by the users, he clarified this as meaning 2,700 hours of use. The programmer left AECL in 1986. In a lawsuit connected with one of the accidents, the lawyers were unable to obtain information about the programmer from AECL. In the depositions connected with that case, none of the AECL employees questioned could provide any information about his educational background or experience. Although an attempt was made to depose the programmer, the lawsuit was settled before this was accomplished. We have been unable to find out anything about his background. I'll just do one more check just to make sure. Yeah, that's it. So this is kind of like a meta review analysis of the information, and they tried to do their best to kind of remove fluff material or stuff that's kind of been, misinformed. So, was he really a hobbyist? One person? It does seem like there's one person involved. Were they a hobbyist? Hard to say based on what I've read anyways. Maybe there's different articles that cover more. But there you go. There you go. That, I thought, was a super interesting read, because it's like all of the different things that I complain about here, along with lots of people in chat and viewers, wrapped up into some of the worst possible scenarios that you can think of. You have people who are already suffering and facing the reality that their lives are going to end soon, probably. And then you have people who are making decisions to cut corners and not check the software they create, try to implement software solutions where they don't belong. The list of idiotic decisions goes on and on and on, and at least 3 people died. It's likely more, but the evidence that I've seen for it is not there isn't an official direct causation. There's just, well, it so happens to be that the timing could be right, that it impacted said individual enough that maybe they didn't die of their cancer, maybe they actually died from the radiation exposure, but it's hard to say. But we have at least 3 confirmed, oh yeah, this person got completely oversaturated with radiation because of these issues. This is the stuff I'm complaining about today. The problem is that today it's on speedrun mode. That's the problem. Anyway, that's it. There's your celebration stream, okay? Celebrate. There's your celebration stream. You guys are great and awesome, and I'm lucky to have people in chat. I really appreciate it. It's been 2.5 hours, so I better go and do my family duties. Be a good husband, be a good father, all that stuff. I've got stuff, chores I got to do around here today, so I better do that. But I thought this was super interesting. I'm really glad we got to read that. And yeah, that was good. That was very good. Thanks for slogging through that with me. It's sad. It's really sad to just to read this kind of stuff. It doesn't, it's not like a feel good story by any measure, but there is good news behind it. And it's that a lot of the problems that they faced back then and that we face currently are solvable, and people can still make good money solving those problems. It does not have to be this bad, and it does not have to be this way. That's the good news. So I point these things out because pointing at the problem helps you to look at the problem in a different perspective, which is how would you fix it? And the fixes are not that bad. We can do it. So there you go. That's a celebration stream. Thanks everybody for all the support. You guys are awesome. And I'll be around on Monday for the Daily Tech News stream. I am going to work probably a little bit this weekend, maybe tomorrow morning on the video game, get a few of the bugs taken out so that the next gaming stream I do, we can work on some game mechanics. That would be fun. That would be more fun than this stuff. Thanks, Unholy. I'll check that out, man. So I'm gonna work a little bit on that so that we can do more game mechanic stuff. But I've gone over time. I've run out of time for today. I don't think I'm going to be around tomorrow. So Monday it is. And one more time, thank you to everybody who comes on and watches and supports me, and even just by being on and watching, it's good. It helps. It helps a lot. The biggest thing that I can say to all of you out there is take this information and apply it in your own lives. Use your own brains, and hopefully it gives you information even as a consumer who doesn't know anything about programming, about why these things happen and how, and it empowers you or arms you to be able to vote with your dollar. Complain about this stuff. Hopefully you'll be able to complain about it better and point to more realistic scenarios or more realistic situations where you're unhappy with what you're paying for in software and websites and video games and all of that. If you're a programmer, hopefully you can take this and learn to apply the downsides of the way that we operate in the coding space and do better. And convince others around you that we need to do better. That's what I hope that you guys are getting out of this. So if you like what I'm doing, you want me to keep doing it, then hit the like, hit the subscribe, repost, reshare, all of that good stuff. It helps expand my reach, even though I hate the algorithms and think that they're bad for your brain. But I cannot think of another way currently that I can expand my reach without a bunch of money or just playing the game for a bit. So, and it's working because more people are reaching out to me almost weekly. I get like one person a week, maybe the last few weeks, who has just kind of come out on DMs and whatnot and been like, hey, I appreciate what you're saying. I didn't really, like, I kind of knew this was a problem, but I didn't really know until I watched one of your videos. And that's because you guys do the engagements and it really helps. So I appreciate it. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay happy. Don't be too depressed. So stupid depressing. Do better. Use Odin. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe out there. Peace out. This isn't a daily tech news stream. So I don't know. Should I do the typical outro? Nah, I won't do it. I'll just peace out and I'll stay quiet and for a minute or so. Okay. Thanks everybody. Bye. Who am I kidding? You all suck. All of you suck. You're all a bunch of losers. You all suck. Every single one of you sucks. You thought you were going to get off the hook because it's not a daily tech news stream? No.